Joining us to discuss all of this is a member of the ECB's Governing Council and Governor of the Central Bank of Austria. Ewald Nowotny is live from Vienna. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. Mr. Nowotny, will the ECB really ever agree to the French plan to give the EFSF essentially a banking license?
Well, you see, I think first it is important to keep things in perspective. The euro as a currency is working, and there are no problems with the euro as a currency. It is a currency that has price stability. You see also the exchange rates are rather stable. So it is not a matter of functioning of the euro. What we do see is that there are problems of some member states of the Eurozone. So it is basically a matter that has to be solved in the fields of fiscal policy and not in the fields of monetary policy. And this is what this summit will be about.
Mr. Nowotny, I completely understand what you're saying. If you say it's not a problem with the currency, it's certainly a problem for the peripheral countries and yields. But essentially what this crisis has proven to us is that it's the ECB that had to step in a lot of the times when it didn't want to, because actually the EU leaders either didn't grasp the severity of the situation or didn't do enough. Now we have the split between the Germans and the French. Will the ECB have to agree basically to what the French want?
No, I think this is not the issue that is at stake. The ECB has a very clear mandate. This is a monetary policy mandate. So there might be some discussions between member states. This is not a real point of the ECB. We have a clear mandate and we have a treaty. So I think the first priority for ECB is to fulfill its mandate. ECB has proved to be active when it is about stabilizing financial markets, but we do not have a mandate to intervene in public finances.
So are you basically telling me that the ECB actually won't budge? And why do you think that the French are pushing on this issue?
Well, again, I think what we have done, we have, as you know, provided the markets with liquidity. This is part of our core business, and at our last meeting, at our last policy meeting, we have increased the provision of liquidity, and I think this is very important because this means that European banks, even if there is a heightened nervosity, will have access to liquidity. This is what ECB can do, and this is what we are doing. We have taken measures to correct some market imperfections. This is our SMP program, but it had been always quite clear that this is not a program in the way like quantitative easing, and it is not a permanent program. So therefore, again, it's important to see things in the right perspective.
And again, I completely understand the mandate of the ECB, but what role would the ECB at this point actually be willing to take on and to play in boosting the EFSF's firepower?
We can give some advice concerning the structure of the EFSF. That might be technical advice. You may have heard that, for instance, also the Deutsche Bundesbank, the German central bank, has voiced some ideas about whether it's really necessary to have a AAA for the bonds, whether there would be room for further lending. But this is not a direct role of ECB. This is technical advice. Basically, EFSF is a matter of governments, and they have to decide about this. And I hope very much that they will decide, because it is clear that a decision is needed as soon as possible.
Mr. Nowotny, how concerned are you when we look at Italian bond yields? They're again at around 6%. How concerned are you about this? And I understand again that it's possibly not the ECB's role, but will you have to again be buying bonds to try and swoop up some of all of this concern out there on the markets?
We are not in a program of generally buying bonds. The S&P program is about correcting specific market imperfections when we see that there is some kind of overshooting, but this is not a regular and not a permanent program. So I do not foresee that we will do this on a permanent basis. I do hope that the governments will come to a solution. I think it will be necessary first, of course, that the countries concerned, the countries that are under stress just now, that they take adequate measures. I think it makes sense that there is some kind of European solidarity, because the European single market is a matter that is of relevance for all European countries. Yeah. But again, this is not a thing where the ECB has a direct role to play, and also is not a direct player.
That's understood. Can you tell me, therefore, if the ECB Council discussed the option of a rate cut at the last meeting, though?
Excuse me, I didn't understand this.
I was going to ask you, can you tell me...
Could you repeat your question?
Absolutely. Can you tell me if the ECB discussed the option of lowering interest rates at the last meeting?
Well, of course, we always discuss options, and this discussion is always based on the economic forecasts and the economic analysis. So at the last meeting, we were of the clear feeling that the priority should be with regard to liquidity provision. We do have, as you may know, what we call the separation principle. That means that we distinguish between the pricing side, that means interest rate policy, and the liquidity provision. So we thought it is more important and more helpful to do something on the liquidity side. We will, of course, discuss interest rate policy again when we have new forecasts.
And how much of a write-down at this point does actually Greece need to achieve a sustainable debt level? And is any debt level sustainable as long as the economy continues to shrink? Is this a real problem?
Of course, this is a problem. So, and therefore, the first priority has to be to increase the growth rates in the countries concerned. Therefore, one has to be aware that all the programs that are also discussed, for instance, in Greece with the Troika, are not only programs to reduce expenditures or to increase taxes. They always include a structural perspective that should enable these countries to grow, and therefore, of course, to reduce the burden of debt.
But Mr. Nowotny, we clearly heard from the Troika saying that actually the Greek debt dynamics have deteriorated during the bailout. So would this not be the right time to actually rethink a lot of these austerity measures?
This is clearly something that always has to be seen also in the context of the general economic development. Unfortunately, we see that the general economic development worldwide and also in Europe is deteriorating. So that clearly doesn't make things easier, but this has to be discussed with the countries concerned. On the one hand, we do need a strict fiscal policy, because these countries have to get control of their public finances. But it is clear we also need some impulses with regards to growth. These are impulses where the European institutions may also be helpful. And as far as I know, for instance, there are special ideas about the European Investment Bank also stepping in. And I think this combination might create additional growth. But of course, kind of controlling such big structural changes always takes time.
But what is the likelihood at this point that actually we're edging towards a recession? And if we are revising our forecast downwards for European growth, how likely will it be that the ECB will have no choice but to cut interest rates in the next couple of months?
Well, the monetary policy of the ECB always is a policy that has to be oriented towards the totality of the Eurozone. So we cannot reflect the needs or the specifics of some specific countries. But one has to see that our growth forecasts for 2012 have been revised downwards. There is a general tendency, unfortunately, just now that we see the economy is weakening more or less worldwide. This is something we will have to reflect.
Mr. Nowotny, thank you so much for your time there. Ewald Nowotny, member of the ECB's Governing Council and Governor of the Central Bank of Austria.